Thank you very much. We are lucky to have a president at the university and a board member in PfC that has such a strong emphasis on the partnership we need, both in terms of the university development and especially on the health issues. Maybe I should also mention that Partnership for Change is also a partner with the EAT initiative. That's also a very large, has a very large focus on the health and nutrition. So then now it's my pleasure to welcome to the scene the panel participants. We have chosen to bring up companies and organizations where we have strong partnerships in the planning or already initiated, and in addition we have the Norwegian Research Council represented. So starting with Julian Wolfson, Daryn Dodson, Saji Prelis, Veie, and Geir Arne. If you could all come to the panel, and we will start discussing. While they are sitting down, I will also, just talking about partnerships, inform you that on the first floor now, Thank you. We have Club de Madrid and several of the world's leading think tanks on climate issues working on the partnerships. We are working together with them on towards both the SDG issues coming up in September and the climate conference in December. So we are all about partnerships. So welcome to the panel. I want all of you to show a little about what you're doing, and then we can discuss where we are collaborating. And Forskningsrådet, or the Research Council, we are not collaborating with you, but you are all about collaboration in research also. So first, Julian. You are Associate Director of Business Development in Acumen. Acumen is an organization we have partnered with for a long time. At the first conference we had, Jacqueline Novogratz, your founder, was here presenting, giving a great impression on the audience. We are talking about how we can collaborate, and please could you tell a little about Acumen, and I think we should go up, if you want to go up to the table, it's easier for you to present.
Oh, goodness. So let me just thank you all for having me here. It's really an honor and a privilege, and hearing that Jacqueline spoke at this event makes it very daunting for me, because those are some big shoes to fill, but I'm really honored to be here. And I should just say that I'm really sorry I wasn't here for yesterday's session, which sounded like it was really excellent. I unfortunately had to be on a strategy panel for a big NGO, and I committed to doing that a long time ago. And I just wanted to mention how interesting it is that what kept coming up as we discussed their kind of 5 and 10-year strategy and their global organization was the emphasis on partnerships. So this dialogue is happening all over the place, and I think that this is really a wonderful moment. So I don't have a lot of time, I'll just jump into it. And just to say a little bit about Acumen for a moment. And the way I think about Acumen is that it's really an organization that was created to answer a couple of questions, and those questions have really evolved over time. And the first question is, why is traditional philanthropy and development leaving people behind? And that should not be to say that we don't believe in traditional philanthropy. In fact, we think it's absolutely critical, but that we identified that there was an enormous gap that needed to be filled. So what we kind of came up with an idea of is, can we invest in enterprises that make a measurable social impact? And out of that, we came out with our patient capital model. And actually, when we first came out with this 14 years ago, it was fairly innovative, but now there's about 300 players in the space. So just to give you a very brief rundown of what this means. So we receive charitable donations. This is philanthropy. We make patient capital investments, which are debt or equity, in early stage enterprises in the global south in a number of sectors. we want to focus on companies, we only focus on companies, I should say, that are making measurable social impact, but also economically viable, and have the opportunity to scale. We see a 7 to 10, and I would say maybe +2 as we learn more and more time frame, and which is why the idea of patient capital is something that we had to come up with. And so what we're seeing now is that when you actually get your exits and returns, and we shoot in our philanthropic model to have a one-time return, so the exact amount we put in is the money we get back and we reinvest it, so that we have kind of a cyclical process and we can continue to invest and continue to grow the businesses and work with them. So the two fundamental building blocks of Acumen was this idea of making social impact through investments and making investments that are sustainable. But the third pillar of this is how do you take this model and bring it to scale? And what we've really realized is that the key to that is something that we cannot do alone, and it's something that we absolutely must do in partnerships. So the one I want to talk about is the Acumen recently announced partnership that we have with Unilever. But before I go into that, I think it's worth mentioning just something about what it takes to build a partnership. And I think a really key component to this story is that it takes a lot of time, and particularly when we're talking about being a not-for-profit and working with a multinational. And I've done this wearing a lot of different hats, and I think that the story that we have here is really very important, and what it tells us is that the relationship began in 2013 when Paul Pullman joined our advisory board, who you saw yesterday, I guess. And through the time of getting to know us, joining our organization, what happened was we were able to establish an understanding of what we are trying to do, what they're trying to do, where there fits, where perhaps there aren't. And fundamentally, it's about establishing trust. By May 2014, Unilever was testing the water of working with us by supporting technical assistance to some of our work in Nairobi, and that was actually very successful. And out of all that trust-building exercises and working together, we were able to come and create the Enhanced Livelihood Initiative, which started with a $5 million contribution from Unilever, and then an additional $5 million from the Clinton Global Initiative. So what I wanted to talk just a little bit on is the Enhancing Livelihoods Investment Initiative. The reason we focused on this is because what we feel is that there is perhaps no greater way of being impactful in raising people up from poverty than through smallholder agriculture. As you can see here, the numbers are just astonishing. When you have 2.5 billion people who are working at some degree in the agriculture sector and the small scale sector, these are people that are earning between $2 and $4 a day, and frankly, more often than not, it's under $2 a day. So this is the target population that we're really focusing on. That's where our investment focus is made. And I think it's also worth noting, for those of you who have had the opportunity to work in Africa and Asia, the size of the farms that we're talking about are very, very small. So the opportunities are limited, and the productivity is really very, very poor. So what we see is that with an effort to work with the smallholder farmers, both from what they're doing, how they're doing it, and how they're reaching consumers, there's a potential to reach at least 1 billion people, which is an enormously exciting opportunity. So that's the why. This is a little bit of the how, and what we've come to the conclusion of is this model, in its kind of most simple form, will work with the companies that Acumen invests in, and we will orient it towards them being able to actually supply to Unilever's supply chain. And that is just an unbelievable game changer, because what that means is that smallholder farmers who have traditionally only been able to sell within the communities and the zones in which they live are now potentially having a global market. And the value addition that we will bring into this enhances the quality and the revenue that they actually have. But what is also critically important is that Acumen and Unilever are not nearly enough. What we realized is that we need a lot of technical assistance, and that comes from other players that we have to bring on board. And it's interesting to note that those can be private sector players, those can be NGOs, the best in class. What's very exciting is that when you have a partnership with an organization like Unilever that is really proving that what they're trying to do is be impactful, people want to come on board. I definitely don't want to step away from the donor community. I think they bring tremendous expertise and insights that are critically important. And the corporations will not stop at Unilever. I mean, once we start working in this, I think people are going to want to join because they see the opportunities and the potential. Fundamentally, what we tried to do is we tried to look at what are the ways we could invest and what were the ways we could actually do this partnership and what would be the impact of that work. And we have actually 3 concurrent viewpoints, and we think all of them will actually be true, which is at the core, we're working on establishing new supply chains. So that's working directly with the farmers. What we realize is it's also about enhancing the productivity of those farmers so that they're getting more value for what they produce. And they're perhaps changing what they produce to actually be more as profitable as it can be. But what we also have found as we've developed this relationship and we've talked to the people on the ground and we've looked in the markets where we actually have our presence, is that we need to do more. We actually need to work within the communities, because if we're already there and we want to actually have the most productive workers, we need to do things around what are they eating, what are the water and sanitation conditions, what are the housing conditions, how are we providing energy, are we building up communities as we're building up profits. And so what we've done is we've taken a 3-prong approach to say that we're going to affect change in all these sectors through what will be a significant global partnership. And that's the Eli project. So
thank you.
Hope I stayed on time there.
And
thank you.
Those of you who were at the Business for Peace ceremony last night knows, and also as Ole Petter mentioned, that Paul Polman of Unilever received the Business for Peace award yesterday. So thank you very much, Julian.
Thank you.
And I guess we could also add 4 times the investments, or is it 5 times the investments that Acumen have done has been matched by partners, co-investors?
We're seeing, so what we've invested approximately $100 million, and we've seen a 5-to-1 ratio of follow-on investment, which is interesting, and I think speaks both to the opportunities and also a bit of risk aversion from some of the other players. Yes, but still, it's very exciting.
Yeah.